Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Hello and welcome. Welcome, friends.
Hi, Rosemary. I like your crown.
Thank you.
Is it a special day?
It is my friend Kira is here staying with me tonight, and we made them
Oh,
together by the river.
oh, isn't that nice? Oh,
Rosemary, do you live near a river?
I live right on a river.
Ah,
Just as we're getting in, I'll just show you right out the window. There it is.
oh my goodness. Tell me what river it is.
That is the wild and mighty San Miguel River.
The Miguel River.
San Miguel, I was just in the East Coast and the rivers there look very different. I think they would call this a creek.
I live on the Colorado River of Texas,
Oh
which goes
yes, it's
from
much
North Texas all the way to the Gulf of Mexico.
well then, friend, all this water, or at least some of it, gets to you. Jenna, do you want to start?
Thank you. So we're so glad that you're here tonight. Thanks to Rosemary, and thank you for Keisha for her amazing tech support, and thanks all of you for joining us. Um, I am Jenna Kirkpatrick. I'm the manager of outreach and engagement for Evermore. Evermore is a national nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C., and our mission is to make the world a more livable place for bereaved people. We are changing policies and practices within our communities and across our nation so that all bereaved people can achieve a healthy, prosperous, and equitable future. Please visit us at evermore.org to learn more. We will also be sharing a special newsletter with you after this workshop called Evermore Voices, and it will contain the recording of this workshop, the collaborative poem we write tonight, the featured poems, and invitations to write from Rosemary. I am also a poet and a bereaved mom. Every morning I read Rosemary's poetry, and one that struck my heart recently was called Intention. And here's an excerpt from that. Can I be that new as I meet this infinite world, to wonder not just with my mind, but with my belly, to let every neuron spark, to notice where there is a channel and imagine the great wing of life is scraping it clean so the stream might flow in new ways, to wander beyond the edge of the known and in that spaciousness lay. My wish tonight is that the words we share hold each of you in community and understanding. Together, we are here to hold this space for one another. Let's take a few seconds for some deep breaths in silence to acknowledge all of our precious light and energy. And please join me in giving a warm welcome to Rosemary.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks to Evermore. Thanks to Keisha. Hi, friends. I'm Rosemary. I am wearing a little flower crown right now that was made by my beloved friend Kira, who's here visiting me. And so it was just too pretty to take off. So I thought I would wear it. I would wear it tonight. Uh, for those of you who haven't been here before, here's just a little bit of how tonight is going to go. I'm going to sing a song, and then I'll read a poem about showing up with grief. We'll write a collaborative poem in which I'll invite everybody to contribute just one line. We'll create it through the chat bar, and then we'll open it up by I've chosen two poems for us, and we'll read a poem. I'll have two people read each poem, and then we'll talk about it for a while. Then there'll be some writing time. We'll come back. There'll be some time for us to talk about process. Then we're going to go off. We'll do the whole thing again, read another poem, talk about it, write about it. And then we'll come back. There will be a chance to share, but I just want to assure you right now that you don't need to share, that you will have an opportunity to go into a small group and listen to other people and perhaps share something you wrote. I'll tell you more about that later, but you also don't have to go into a small group. You can also stay in the main group, and we'll talk about process. That's a little bit about what our time together is going to look like tonight. So I just want to start by, it's a little, I suppose, invocation-ish with a poem, part of a poem from Mary Oliver called Snow Geese. And she writes, "Oh, to love what is lovely, and will not last, and will not last. What a task to ask of anything or anyone, yet it is ours, it is ours. Oh, to love what is lovely and will not last. What a task to ask of anything or anyone, yet it is ours, it is ours." Again, that's Snow Geese by Mary Oliver. And that poem, as well as all the other poems that we're going to read together tonight, and the writing invitations that I'll give you, that will all be emailed to you by Jenna after our program, in addition to the recording. So that will all be coming to you. You don't need to worry about what the poems are. Tonight's program is going to be 2 hours. And what's going to happen in these 2 hours? I just want to invite you to think about right now what it is that brought you here. What is it? Who is it that you are grieving? And I understand that griefs come in so many, there's a wide array of griefs. It could be the death of a person or the loss of a person, even if it isn't a physical death. It could be the loss of a relationship, or it could be the loss of what we thought was a dream of ours, or even what's happening to our planet, to our country. It could be any of these things. As you put them in the chat bar, I'm going to go ahead and light a candle. This has become important to me. Each time I meet a new loss, my own or someone else's, I like to light a candle and say the names of our beloveds. And as I do this, I think of when my own son Finn died, how my friend Wendy said something to me that was profoundly, essentially important to my own ability to move forward. She said, "He has given you his love light to carry." So as I light this candle, perhaps you light a candle of your own, thinking of the love light that you have been given to carry. I'll just say the name: Finn, Charles, Donna. And I'll keep our candle lit the whole time we're writing together. I see, thank you. For those of you who are putting in the chat bar the names of who or what you are grieving. So thank you for that. Deb, and a father, and a mentor, and Annie, a love never born, and Bakari, and Thatcher, and Peter, Azima, and Rachel, and Ryan, and Russell. So many others. Thank you, friends, for adding the names of your own people who you're grieving, and perhaps say that name out loud, and also consider saying out loud the name of someone else's. Just saying their names sometimes such an essential way to honor their presence and how they still live through us. When we're writing together, here is what will not happen. We will not fix anything. We are not going to make it all better. We're not going to heal. It's not a panacea. What writing has helped me to do is to meet every moment as a new moment. It helps me to be very curious about what is most true right now. It helps me to question what I thought was true. It helps me to meet some very opposite truths at the same time, especially I think about the paradox of how, you know, that he is dead. Is he dead? He's alive right now. How are they both true? You know, physically gone and yet somehow so present. And somehow poetry allows us to meet these paradoxes. The other thing that I think poems allow us to do in a right practice of writing is allows us to be very still. And so I just want you to know that if you don't write a single word tonight, but you just sit and show up to be present with loss, sitting very still is also an essential part of a writing practice. And the poem itself, friends, I think of as a byproduct. In fact, let's just say that you have nothing to do tonight. If just showing up, this is already enough. Maybe you're going to write, maybe you won't, but to bring your willingness to show up is enough. Maybe you brought your unwillingness, that's okay too. I promise you can only do it right. Whatever you do, you can only do it right. So, the other thing I just want to make all of us promises that tonight, none of us is going to write anything any good, not one of us. But every one of us, I hope, will dare to write something true. And if you just write one true line, maybe that's enough. Or maybe you can build a longer poem by writing the next true thing and the next true thing and the next true thing. And that's all that is asked of us. The other thing that I'm going to ask everyone to do is to know that it is very courageous to show up to a group where we're going to meet grief together. That's a courageous space. And in that courageous space, I invite each of you to wonder, how do I take care of myself? And how do I help take care of the other hearts who are here too? How do I help create this a space that is tender, that is open to vulnerability, that feels like a space where we can be courageous? Also honoring that grief is so different for every single one of us. And it can be so different from moment to moment, even for one person. So we're going to begin with this little poem that I wrote. It's in my new book, The Unfolding. And it begins with this phrase that I used almost every day. In that first year of my son's death, I began almost every poem with this thought: today grief is. And here is that poem, one of those poems. It's called Acceptance. Today, grief is a long, steady rain. And the thing to do is to walk in the long, steady rain. The thing is to let the face get wet, let the clothes get wet, let the hair get wet and plastered against the cheeks, the neck. The thing is to meet the soaking world and the soaking skin and the soaking shoes and the soaking dreams and not pretend it's dry. Whatever longing there is for dryness, it is soaking too. Because it is raining, the thing to do is to walk in the long and steady rain, to walk in the sodden and soaking world, to trust it will not rain forever, to breathe in the scent of the wet, wet earth, to kiss the rain, to be kissed by rain, to be wet in the wet, wet world. that poem will come to you. Oh, it just showed up in the chat bar. It'll also show up for you in the email, the follow-up email with the recording. But right now I'm going to invite us all to write a poem that begins with the same phrase. Today, grief is, just type it in the chat bar. Today, grief is. And I invite you to fill that in. Oh, thanks, Keisha. To fill that in with any word that feels like it comes next, any word or phrase. If you put them in the chat bar, then I'm going to read them out loud and we're going to just create a group, spontaneous group poem that's going to realize this broad expanse of what's possible as we meet grief. Today, grief is raw and tender. It's heavy and so sad. Today, grief is heavy, painful. It's newly fresh again. Today, grief is present. It's slow and sluggish. It's my garden overflowing with wild sorrel. It's 4-year-old Daniel called loving hearts. Today, grief is achy and hollow. It's wild. It's shock and fog, a tsunami breaking upon us. Today, grief is lonely. It's a reminder. It's just there. It's risky and unknown and unsteady space. It's gentle. It's everywhere. It's a shocking wonder. It's tiring, ephemeral. Today, grief is the sweat from doing what I no longer can do. It's creeping back in. It's settling in my heart. It's a long, hollow wanting. Today, grief is an apology. It's a spiraling. It's whole and whole and holy. Today, grief is a monkey on my back, strangling me from behind. It's familiar, yet still unexpected. Today, grief is a lonely ache, a peaceful. It's bits of joy and my friend, the crow. It's emptiness. It's blowing, tumbleweeding, breathless. It's caring about my nieces and nephews missing their cousin. It's so subtle. Today, grief is behind a veil, complicated and confusing. It makes memory hard. It's heavy. It's weighing me down. It's a blanket. Today, grief is my soft companion. It's a gentle breeze, and it's hollow and frozen. It's numb, but always present. It's in my bones. It's in my pulse. It's in the blood coursing through. It's dormant, but waiting to be wakened with a memory. Today, grief is a gnawing ache, a deep throb in my mid-back. It's present and weighty. It closes my eyes. It bows my head and grits my teeth. It's a shattering of my heart. It's heavy and exhausting. It's never ending. It's hidden. It's close and full. It's far and distant. It's a surprise. It's alive and well. Today, grief is a butterfly. It's the last straw. It's pretending those who remain are enough. Today, grief is wishing I could hear my dad's voice and going to Adam's supermarket and not buying meat ends because Sirius died and doesn't need earthly food anymore. Today, grief is a portal to an impossible hope for a future. It's ever here in my every breath. Oh, well, that was stunning, friends. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those. If I'm just going to put it out there, this was the most important practice, I think, for me for writing after my son and my father died. Every day I'd just sit down and I'd wonder, what is it today? Today, grief is. Today, grief is. Today, if the other writings don't really work for you, you could just sit and make a list of this. Today, grief is, or just follow one thing. Today, grief is a pest, and then just wonder, okay, how does that play out? Today, my poem, today's a long and steady rain. Today, grief is a long, steady rain. And just wonder, okay, how? What's it like? What's it like to be in this moment with this kind of grief? So we're going to read a poem. This first one we're going to read together is by Donna. I don't actually know how to say her name. I better ask her. Spruit Metz. I wish I could say it correctly. If anybody does know how to say her name, please jump in and save me on that one. I'm going to invite two people to read the poem out loud, and Keisha's about to share it on the big screen so that you're able to see it. It'll also be pasted into the chat bar. And I'm not going to be able to see if you've raised your hand. So if you could please use the reactions bar to raise your hand so I know that you're willing to be a person who would read the poem out loud for everyone. The first time you read the poem or you're listening to the poem, I'm going to invite you to just listen, like lean in as if you can listen with your whole body. What's in this poem for you? And then the second time you listen to the poem, I invite you to close your eyes and lean back and let the poem do all of the work as if it asks nothing at all of you except that you show up. Thank you, Joanne and Sasha. Joanne, take it away, friend.
Person. My person, there were so many stars last night, at least for the light polluted skies of Los Angeles. And I was thinking of you. Perhaps you are finally at one with your mountains, all the stars you saw there. I want you to know this. I wouldn't call you back, not to a body that would, oops, I have to move my little screen, not to a body that would be unable to walk the mountains freely, even though I miss you. Even though the hole you left in me is vast, please trust me. I know you were done with this mortalness, the betrayal of it. I won't summon you back. But today, my first museum visit since you died, an exhibit on of photorealism, you might have hated it, but there was one painting, Father's Day, the artist reunited with her father. After he spent 40 years in a Chinese labor camp, it was mournful. It was stunning and dangerous. And she used glaze the way you did when you were first learning it. And you and I, we didn't call one another darling or pumpkin or any of that bullshit. We called one another person as a reminder.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. And Sasha, I see that you dropped out, and I see that Joanne Snyder has her hand still up. So, Sasha, maybe we can get you
I
next
haven't
time.
read yet.
And great, yes, Joanne, jump in.
I think yeah, I'll read another time. I think the problem was that there
Oh,
were two Joannes.
Yes, yes.
okay.
Sasha, I'll choose, can I, if I can
That's
call you in
right.
next time. Okay.
Not a big deal. So who's going to read?
Jump on in, Joanne.
Okay, person. That's quite a name. Donna Spruget Metz. My person. There were so many stars last night, at least for the light polluted skies of Los Angeles. And I was thinking of you. Perhaps you are finally at one with your mountains. All the stars you saw there, I want you to know this. I wouldn't call you back, not to a body that would be unable to walk the mountains freely, even though I miss you. Even though the hole you left in me is vast, please trust me. I know you were done with this mortalness. The betrayal of it, I won't summon you back, but today, my first museum visit since you died, an exhibit of photorealism. You might have hated it, but there was one painting, Father's Day, the artist reunited with her father. After he spent 40 years in a Chinese labor camp, it was mournful. It was stunning and dangerous, and she used glaze the way you did when you were first learning it, and you and I, we didn't call one another darling or pumpkin or any of that bullshit. We called one another person as a reminder. I'm gonna put that.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne and Joanne. And
That's
I,
funny.
so I want to invite, I've put the poem is in the chat bar, and I want to invite you, friends, to, and maybe can we, Keisha, can we put the poem back up on the screen too? Although we'll only see half of it, I suppose, at a time. But just what did you notice about this poem? Was there a word, a phrase, or an image that stands out to you? Or did you notice something that it brought up in you as you were listening? Once again, I won't be able to see if you raise your hand physically. I'll need you to use the reactions bar to raise your hand, or if you're unable to find that, you can put your name into the chat bar. And like Ellen just did, she just wrote, I wouldn't call you back. And Dee wrote the same thing. What a brave thing to say. Lisa, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say the sort of the same thing that really struck me, that not calling, I see you, I can't really read it, but I wouldn't summon you back. I know you were done with this earthly, I can't read it, but because those faces are in the way, but yeah, just the whole thing about, even though selfishly we would want the person to be here, we wouldn't want them to come back and suffer and not be able to do what it was that they loved, that this person loved going to the mountains, but in the condition that he was in when he died, he couldn't have. So just letting him go, that was very moving to me.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for speaking to that, Lisa. And so many people in the chat bar are commenting on that same thing. It is so brave. It's so almost impossible to imagine that we wouldn't want them back. And yet there's also this possibility, I think. Joanne, you're on mute, sweet friend. You're
By
you're
now.
still on. There you go. Got it.
Yep, got it. My person, there were so many stars last night, at least for the light, polluted skies of Los Angeles. I love stars and they mean a lot to me, stars, especially on a clear night, which happens.
Yes. And I think that, that I personally, I go out and talk to the stars and talk to them, talk to my beloveds who are gone as if through the stars. And I
Yes.
love this, how the poem itself is a letter, right? It's just a letter
Mhm.
to this person who's gone, my person. And then she tells, I believe her father, this is what it's like here right now. This is what it's like here on Earth without you here. There's so many stars last night. Yeah, I love that part too. Thank you, Joanne, for bringing that in. Anyone else? Well, I see there's lots of things in the chat bar. The courage explained by the specialness of their love. Yes, I believe that too, Teresa. Talking to stars, and Maida says she talks to the birds. Um, oh yeah, a couple of people I see in the chat bar have brought up the difference between to call someone and to summon them. I wouldn't call you
Oh,
back or summon you. Sarah, how about you? What do you notice?
Huh. Yeah, thank you. And now it's on the second page of the poem, actually, I think. Oh, yeah, no, it is on the first page. I'm so sorry. The part that really struck me was, but today, my first museum visit since you died, and just thinking about when my daughter died and having gone back out into the world and what that felt like the first time, and also recognizing at the end of the poem that they were either both or one of them, the deceased, was a painter. And so putting themselves in that space of art and how it's just so inexplicably like gorgeous and devastating at the same time. And so that just really struck me that, and I don't know if that time was 5 years from now, yes, 2 days later, a week later, a month, and none of that matters because it just seems like that moment you walk back out into a public space is so filled with so much.
Yeah, right. So filled with so much. And I love too, Sarah, how you point to this paradox of it being absolutely devastating and also so beautiful. And how is it that they can be both at the same time? And yes, pointing to the firsts, right? When we're going back into public space, or even if, the first time you go back into their room, the first time that hear the song that they loved, the first time you go in the grocery store and see the thing that they love to eat. Yeah. Thank you for bringing all that in. And we'll have Jill, Caroline, Trudy, and then that will be all the time we'll have. Jill, you're still on mute. There.
I would say the perhaps you are finally at one with your mountains. To me, the mountain is highs and lows and rugged, and you're climbing and climbing, and sometimes you don't reach the top. And so my son was always trying to reach certain goals. And so to me, that made me feel like now maybe he's finally at peace. He's finally, at one with the mountains. So
Thank you.
mhm.
Thank you, Jill, and for bringing in that beautiful metaphorical thought about the highs and the lows, and maybe we reach, maybe we don't. Thank you for that. And Caroline, then Trudy, and that's all we'll have time for.
She starts with the stars, and that's the word that struck me because she reconnects to the whole universe. It's like when we're in grief, everything shrinks, and we're just like the world becomes a particle. Our world becomes a particle. So bringing up the stars, which you loved, it's just reconnecting with the mystery of life because we don't know what happened. We don't know where they are. We can have ideas, we can do shamanic visioning, we can do tons of stuff, but in the end, we don't know the mystery of life and death on this planet. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much too for bringing that in about just, yes, about that, how small the world can become, especially in these first stages of grief or as it comes back, and what is it to open that lens up, so profound in a way. Thank you so much for that. Trudy.
Yeah, thank you. I think the phrase that I put in the chat is you might have hated it, and that seems like a really small, mundane phrase, really simple, but for me, it jumped out because it felt so conversational. It infused the whole thing with this presentness as opposed to some letter you've sent to someone who's gone that you're never going to see again. It was sort of an acknowledgement that they often had discussions and had differences of opinion, and that it is all one-sided now. And so somehow that one-sidedness and the loss of that a dialogue with that person struck me in that phrase.
Right. Beautiful. The loss of the dialogue, and yet she knows him enough to know what he might have liked or hated, right? So
Yeah.
so there's that bringing him in, like, I still have your perspective with me, even though, we might have been different about this, but I still have that sense of how you saw the world. Thank you so much for bringing that in, Trudy. And yes, how intimate that is. So, if you would please, Keisha, put into the chat bar the writing invitations for this. Friends, I'm just going to reiterate as the invitations come up on the screen, and I've also put them in the chat bar. Here's the thing. I'm only invite. These are all just possibilities. If none of them work for you, please do whatever does work for you. You don't get any stars or bonus points for using these. I'm only suggesting you would use one at a time, and then maybe another time you could write on another one. And here are some ideas. Invitations to write for person. Write a letter to the one that you have lost, telling them about the last day, or maybe tell them about the last time you thought about them. What was it that sparked the memory? And tell them about it in great detail and use as many of your senses as possible. I'm just really realizing, friends, how potent it is when I invite the body to come into the poetry. And we do that. We invite the body in through our senses. That's idea one. Idea two, write a poem about a first after the one you have lost has died, or if they haven't died since they've left you. The first time you walked into their room, or the first time you drove their car, or the first time you wore something they gave you, or the first Mother's Day or Father's Day without them. What was it like to meet this moment? And what did you feel in your body? And what questions do you have about this experience? And the last idea I have for you is just to write about a nickname or a special name you had for the one you lost, or maybe a name they had for you. In Donna's poem, they call each other person. How did that nickname start? How does it make you feel when they would call you that name or when you would call them that name? And what is it like to not hear them say it now? How does that special name still connect with who you are? So we're going to take, let's say, 15 minutes for writing. So we'll come back together at 50 minutes after the hour. I will give you a 1-minute warning and then I'll sing you back in to our group. Once again, whatever you do, friends, you can only do it right, even if you don't write a single word. We'll come back together in 15 minutes at 50 after the hour. And a little less than a minute. Welcome back, friends. And we won't be going into small groups, not now, and maybe you will later, and maybe not. So just know that you'll have a choice about if you go into a small group or not, at the end. And I feel like always that's so important, just so you know that you can write whatever is most true for you, right? You don't need to be worrying about having to share it and is that going to be okay? I really do want to help create a space where you feel like you can write really just for yourself. And I have to tell you that when I write, every day, I am not thinking about other people when I'm writing. I think of it fairly selfishly, um, that I'm really just writing for myself. So I invite you to do this also, friends. Um, but there will be a chance to share if you so wish. So we have a few minutes to talk about what did you notice about the process? What did you notice about yourself as you were writing, not sharing what you wrote, but talking about what you noticed? Did it just flow out of you? Were you surprised? Were you stuck? What happened if you were stuck? Was it difficult, or just anything anyone can share at all about your process today? And once again, I'll need you to use the reactions bar to raise your hand because I am unable to see if you're physically raising your hand. And Joanne, you're on mute, friend.
Joanne, me? Joanne?
Joanne Snyder.
This one. Hi.
I will get better at that.
Rarely have I been in a class with another Joanne, so that's kind of cool. Um, I found it interesting. I think it was in a poetry class of Rosemary's in January or February of 2024. I tried writing a poem about this person, and then I think I shared some of it, but I just wept. I could not go on and write the poem. I just couldn't do it. It was just way too early. And of course, January, February 2024, it's over a year ago. And right now, I wrote a poem about this person, and they seemed even more real, but yet the tears weren't there. It felt, I think, like grace, to be quite honest, for me. It felt like a sense of grace that, yeah, they're here and they're around, but it's not what I call the jaggedness of early grief. So, and this person died very suddenly. So that was some of my observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm so glad you brought this in. Yes, sometimes it is too tender to touch, right? Maybe we do just sit and weep. And if that's what a writing process is today, yes, knowing that maybe tomorrow or next week, or even like you say, a year later, that it is possible. And also letting us know that I can't tell you how many poems I wrote completely weeping the whole time,
Mhm.
so just whatever our capacity is in that moment to be able to show up, and to know there are so many ways to show up that may or may not involve a pen. Thank you for that, Joanne. I'm going to share a couple from the chat bar. Jill says it was difficult because it was painful. Yes, I don't doubt that, friend. Terry says it flowed easily and also so heavy to bring back the memories. there's that paradox, right? It's just coming and it's also so heavy. Deborah, very similarly, feeling emotional and bringing back painful memories. And Michael saying about the 12th anniversary of my mother receiving her miracle lift, a comforting phrase the shepherd made me aware of will be on the 15th. Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing that. Adam and Janet, and then I think Joanne, you also had your hand up. So we'll have those three, and then we'll see if we have time for more.
I guess for me, I was surprised at how much I was judging myself as I was writing. And then I realized as I got to the end that it was about Mother's Day, and I was so surprised at how hard it was for me that my wife was gone and that nobody recognized that it would be hard for me. And how much I loved being with her on her Mother's Day. And I finished with how could they have known if I didn't know myself?
Right. Right. What a beautiful, interesting piece of compassion to come through. Yeah, and I can hear the wound of it also, Adam. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Janet.
Hello. I wrote about my best friend of 40 years' death. Tomorrow will be 9 years. And it was very hard to go through that. But I was one of the people in the room with her when she passed, and it made it okay. And I joke with people that she was kind enough to die the day before the holiday, so I didn't have to go back to work the next day. I know that's a sick sense of humor, but I had to cope with it somehow.
Yes, humor helps. Humor helps, friend.
But she was very special, and her husband passed away 3 years later.
Yeah. Yes, and how present it still can be, right? How present it doesn't matter if it's 9 years, if it's 20 years, how very present these losses can be. Especially as we come close to anniversaries sometimes, or as there's a moment that brings us close to them again. Thank you. Thank you, Janet, for sharing that.
Thank you.
I see that Sarah says in the chat bar, so many firsts to choose from. Yes, right. How can son be ruthless? His mother was given the middle name Ruth. Oh, yes. And Carol says that the words flowed. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that. Joanne.
So I was taking the lead from the first poem that we read and just included nature in my writing, and it was very healing, and I learned, it revealed to me something very beautiful.
Yeah. Joanne, thank you for sharing that. I think there's something really potent about that for me also, I know. Is just in some way it's the widening of the lens like we were talking about earlier. And just bringing ourselves into our bodies and out into the larger world. And there is something about that perspective shift that can flood us with a certain grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I see that Fran wrote, nothing I have written feels right. It's too soon. It's too close. And Fran, my goodness, do I understand that? I just want to say that how many hundreds of poems at this point have I written about the loss of my son? And I don't know that I've ever gotten it right, by the way, and for this reason, I continue to write the poems because not one poem will ever touch it all, will it? Ever. Dawn says it was relieving. And Linda says, I found myself marveling at the strength and resilience of my mother. What a beautiful thing to see another person in this way. And Lisa, if you would, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I wrote a letter to my father, and this is actually probably the third letter I've written to him, but this time it was about his death because I was in the room with him. I've written other letters where I kind of tell him what's gone on, and I have written a letter that he wrote to me, quote unquote, where he told me all the things I wish he would told me. But this was just a different experience because you talked about using our senses and what it was really like in the room. I was in the room when he died, so it was very painful. Yeah, even though it was 13 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Lisa, thank you for sharing that. And just about the difference when we bring it into our bodies, right? Thank you for sharing that. I see Maida, Leah, and Cindy, and then that will be all we'll have time for. Maida, am I saying your name right?
Yep, Ada. I'm thinking about there's 74 people in this group, and I'm thinking about we're talking a lot about death loss, and that wasn't what I was thinking about. So I just wanted to speak about it for a moment in case anybody else was wondering about that too, because what I wrote about was the death of a relationship, and the loss of the dreams and the visions that were part of that died, and that I've always um I haven't always really written about that, but I've always thought about it as a death in its own power of the grief. And I just want to say what I noticed was I started to write in first person I, and then I changed to you, and I wrote like I was talking to this other person, and it felt more relaxing to be able to do that. I did that for my own benefits, just to say, so this is what happened when you did this, and then you did this, and like this person had told me about this, and I was thinking, well, are you not sitting in the grief that's so old, or are you just giving yourself a little fresh air, not being so um embroiled with it, but saying, yeah, you did this and you did this and you got out of this and you had to get out of this and it was not good for you. And I've heard myself thinking I was being kind of motherly in my writing. And so
To
just wanted to
yourself,
share that.
right? Motherly to yourself.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
this is
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
beautiful. And I love Maida how you just noticed that shift, right? And you followed it. You're like, oh, this is what wants to come. This is so beautiful. When I think this happens, I always use the words of my beloved friend Jack, who would say, obey the poem's emerging form. And that's what you did, right? You followed where the poem wanted to go, writing this letter in a way to yourself with such compassion. The other thing that I noticed was that you started asking questions about it, right? And just let yourself live in, not answering those questions from what I just heard you say, but just wondering, just bringing that wonder in. And that can be such a very powerful way to meet a loss, no matter what the loss is. Thank you also for bringing in
Thank
the
you.
many flavors of loss. Leah, then Cindy, and then we'll read another poem.
I have an evening practice, which is to walk to the hill behind my house where my son's ashes are scattered, and now my husband's ashes are scattered. And I sit and think, and I have always written. I have been encouraged to write. I've not been able to do that within the past 3 years. And what writing did for me in this moment was allowed me not to continue to harbor things, but to put them out there. It gave them voice.
Yeah. Wow, beautiful, Leah. Thanks for sharing that. Just that's another beautiful gift that poetry can offer us, right? Is just what a lovely verb, not to harbor, but to give them voice. Thank you for that. And Cindy.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I I lost my son to suicide 3 years ago, and I've always sort of been drawn to writing, but I just whoever else said that I couldn't. In the first year and a half, I took some writing workshops for grief, and I was just like, oh, this is not working for me. I can't do it. It just nothing came. And now it's starting to, because I guess I'm so bored with saying things in the same way. Or I write in a journal and it's like I just vomit my thoughts. And just having a little step back and a little bit of intention. I'm not trying to be published. I'm just saying, should I use this word or that word sometimes? And it can, like other people have said, it can either just give you a little perspective that's a little step back, or you can be reading your own story and go, wow. And this time I used first person or we, but I've done it in the third person too. And when it works, it's very interesting how you can say things, when they say show them, don't tell them. And it's not for them, it's for me. But,
Yeah,
it
right.
reveals things.
Oh, Cindy, so much you said resonates, right? How it is for us, right? Becomes a practice for us. Also, how we will get bored, right? We do eventually get bored with our whatever we have to say, and the way that our writing can open things up for us into a new perspective, right? Oh, there, which we couldn't have seen. I like to say, let the poem know more than you do, right? Come to the poem without knowing what's going to happen. And in this is how we find the new story. Oh, that's what else is happening now. This is how we grow out of those they become shackles sometimes, our stories. And this is how we, I think, can move through them and see what else is possible. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks to everyone who shared in the chat bar and everyone who shared in your voice. And so I'm going to ask now again, Sasha, if you would come back and please be a reader for our next poem. The next poem is by Richard Solly, Grief Comes with a Ladder. And I need one more person too, please, to volunteer to read the poem. And I'll need you to raise your hand. Dee, thank you so much. All right, so Sasha, and this one is just one page, so you can see it all on the screen right now.
Grief Comes with the Ladder by Richard Solly for K. Friend, you ask when it will end. All I know is that grief comes with the ladder, though not for ascending. Try to decipher the language of leaves, other faces, as strange as they appear. Its alphabet will not make sense. Nothing, not even birds, exists now as they should. Never mind them. Their song belongs elsewhere. Your task is clear. Climb one hand, one foot, one after another takes you there. You ask, do words help? Remember, the truest prayer is said before you utter its words, like the wind stirs the feather of a still bird. The words themselves that lift into the air don't matter. Only the silence and sky that summon you. I know only this. As you reach the last rung, as your clothes become threadbare, as hope becomes a whisper, a reversal happens. Like water when it's displaced by weight, rises, and is now overflowing the brim. What took you down now takes you up. One morning, a sign of change, shade under the leaves of a small tree.
Grief comes with a ladder. Friend, you ask when it will end. All I know is that grief comes with a ladder, though not for ascending. Try to decipher the language of leaves, other faces, as strange as they appear. Its alphabet will not make sense. Nothing, not even birds, exists now as they should. Never mind them. Their songs belong elsewhere. Your task is clear. Climb one hand, one foot, one after another takes you there. You ask, do words help? Remember, the truest prayer is said before you utter its words. Like the wind stirs the feather of a still bird, the words themselves that lift into the air don't matter. Only the silence and sky that summon you. I know only this. As you reach the last rung, as your clothes become threadbare, As hope becomes a whisper, a reversal happens. Like water, when it's displaced by weight, rises and is now overflowing the brim. What took you down now takes you up. One morning, a sign of change, shade under the leaves of a small tree.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dee, and thank you, Sasha. All right. So again, I'll invite anyone who would like to jump in, especially if you haven't said anything yet.
Oh,
I'm happy to just raise, you're gonna need to either put in the chat bar, I can't get in, or to use the reactions bar to raise your hand. And Joanne.
this is just a spectacular poem. The feeling I get from it is so real and yet so delicate. And I find often my deepest feelings, I relate to this because often my deepest feelings are like, he says, the truest prayer is said before you utter its words, like the wind stirs the feather of a still bird. And I find more and more in my grief process, it's more a feeling that moves either in my heart or soul, or I witness in nature. It's and he or is it yeah he captures that so beautifully. And you know, and what he says, the words themselves that lift into the air don't matter, only and the silence and sky that summon you. I guess that's echoing what I just said a few words ago. But it's a wonderful poem. I think it's very empowering for people that might think they have to get through A, B, C. I think it's very empowering for people that might happen to think that. But it's a really wonderful poem and very, very hopeful. But it does happen gradually. But you can just, it's like you wake up and you have an epiphany, which feels like a change, and it is. I
Yeah.
just love that poem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I love how you bring in and how he says, do the words help? Remember, the truest prayer is said before you utter the words. There's the irony, right? What are we doing? We're bringing words, but this is part of why I say that the poem is the byproduct, and it's just kind of this willingness to sit. It's just that willingness to show up and meet it. You don't actually get to do it, I think, without the words, thinking that that's going to happen, but how that whole process, then the irony that we're bringing the language, but it's the moment before the language comes that we're most trying to touch.
And that's the hardest to write. Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's an impossibility. Let's be honest. We'll never do it. And yet, the engagement, the trying. And we'll have Ellie and then Laura, and then we'll do some writing again.
Also, the words, the truest prayer is said before you utter its words, just the awareness of what's present, and then we put words to it. And there's something, I'm in just the first year of two losses, very, very deep ones, especially in the past few months as I lost my daughter. But this idea that the ladder is not ascending, and it says a reversal happens, but to me, it doesn't mean I can feel that early for me reluctance to ascend anything. Like I don't want to ascend. And in some ways, the beautiful line about water when it's just displaced by weight rises, like it's not without the weight. The rising is not separate from what took you down now takes you up, like it's still present. So while there's sort of this hopefulness, it feels like a hopefulness that is connected to the desire to never let it be not what it is.
Yeah, so beautifully said, Ellie. Right. What brings you down is what also helps you rise, and that strange paradox. How is that? Thank you for bringing in those lines about that displaced weight, and also just for bringing in again that it's not. We don't even want to ascend. Why would I be ascending out of this? And I really appreciate you saying that and bringing that in about how he brings in this ladder, not to be rising, just to be doing this, right? It's just this. It's just the being there. And thank you for that. And Laura, this will be our last comment before we do some writing.
Thank you. I think for me, my sister. My sister was a gardener. She was a master gardener, and so anything that has to do with trees, and I had written earlier about trees as we talked about that, really captures my mind because Mary was very her specialty was trees. So there's two things I really noticed here. One is the language of leaves. Try to decipher the language of leaves, which I tried to do because I felt she was talking to me in those leaves. And then at the end, he starts that way. At the end, he says, one morning, a sign of change, shade under the leaves. So the leaves changed. I don't know if the leaves changed, or for me, I think what's happened over the last year and a half is nothing was the same. Everything was different. Even a meal or a tree or anything. And I think now they're changed.
Yeah.
They just changed.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. And I love the way that you bring in this personal relationship with the trees, right? And I just want to suggest that anytime that you find a line that really speaks to you, for instance, you try to decipher the language of leaves, that might be a beautiful launching point for you in your own practice, right? Just to take that line and wonder about what it has to offer you and this idea of the sign of change and what has changed. And really beautiful. Thank you for that. So friends, I'm going to put into the chat bar some of them along these lines. Here are some ideas. And also, thank you so much, Keisha, for putting it up on the screen. Begin with this line. All I know is grief comes with a... Now, he said ladder. I've written a poem about an eraser. Anything you could, I promise you, friends, you could actually put anything into this and it will work, right? Fill in the blank with any object and then trust that whatever you fill it in with will have something to teach you. Another idea, write a note to yourself about grief and begin. Your task is to, I just want to point out that this poem is written like advice, right? You may or may not be comfortable giving anyone else advice, but perhaps you have some advice to offer yourself. And the last idea I have, what have you noticed about how your grief has changed? And what does that change look like? And how does that make you feel? You may have very complicated feelings about that change. Friends, it's 6:17. We're going to come back in 15 minutes. So at 22 after the hour, I'll give you again a 1-minute warning. Not 22, 32, 32 after the hour. And a little less than a minute. Welcome back, friend. So at this point, you have a choice. You can either choose to go into a small group, or you can choose to stay in the main room where we will continue to talk about process. If you do go into a small group, this is what will look like. There will probably be 3 people in your group, and you will take turns. And if you do choose to share, while you're sharing, these would be some of your options. Number one, you could read one of the poems that you wrote tonight. Don't worry, if you want to stay in the main group, then you just do nothing. So don't worry, no one will put you into a small group. You will have to choose to be in a small group. If you are the speaker in the small group, then you can read something that you wrote tonight, one of the pieces. You can read just a small part of what you wrote, or you can not read what you wrote, but talk about your process. All of these would be perfectly appropriate. You could also say, I'm just here to listen. And then the 2 other people in your group would have a longer time to share. When it's time to change roles, then Keisha is going to come in, or maybe Jenna, I think, will come in and say, hey, it's time to change people, so you don't have to worry about being a timekeeper. If you are a listener, that is your job, friends, is to listen. I can tell you what will not happen tonight. There will be no criticism. There will not be any, oh, if it were my poem, I would. No, we're not trying to change anyone's poem. We're not trying to perfect it or polish it. If you are a listener, your job is to witness the other person and then to maybe offer them an open, honest question that helps them to really think more about what their own process is. And thank you so much to Keisha for putting those questions that you might ask each other into the chat bar right now. Questions, for instance, what surprised you about your writing? Or what surprised you about your process? Were you ever stuck? What did you do then? What part feels most true for you? What part was most difficult to write? Where else do you think this might want to go? What did you notice about your own writing when you read it? What questions do you have for your own writing? Or maybe you could choose a line like we were doing from the other people's poems that we were reading. Just choose a line out of their poem and say, repeat it to them and say, tell me about that. But notice how all of these are opportunities for that person to really go more deeply into their own process. That, if you are a listener, is your job, is to be a reflector, a witness, and to help them think about their own process. Please don't praise, please don't criticize. If you said nothing at all, this would be just fine also. Just let the person continue to talk. Each person will have about 5 minutes. So you are all going to have now an invitation will show up for you to go into a small room. If you end up in a room all by yourself, don't worry. In just a little bit, Keisha will find you another room and you will be entered into another room. So don't worry about that. Again, somebody is going to come in and say it's time for you to change. And if you do not wish to go into a small group, then just don't accept the invitation and you'll stay in the main group. All right. Keisha, if you would send out those invitations, please. At the bottom, you should see where it says join the breakout room and go ahead and accept that or not. All right. And at this point, is there anyone still in the main room who wishes they were in a small group? Okay. So, and I know, Keisha, you're working on helping people get into other groups. For the people who are in this main room, we're starting at 6:36, just noticing that for our timing. And I would like to invite you, anyone who's here who has any kind of question at all about process, something you noticed about yourself tonight, something about one of the poems that we already read, or if you have a question for me about poetry or about process, I'd love to talk about that now. Anybody willing to ask a question or share about your process tonight? Caroline.
Hi. I wanted to share that I started with all I know is that grief comes with blah blah blah, and then I wrote a second line, and then as you can hear, I'm French. I've been here for 26 years, but I've loved poetry since I'm a teenager. I used to read all the great French poets, and for me, language is very precious. So in my process, I could not start in French because your promptings were very powerful from the powerful poem, which I had the hard time connecting to. So I started with your promptings, and then I switched to French, and then something just opened up. And I could not connect to the word reversal because I've been in grief for many years now, and it seems like so the word reversal in French is retournement, and there is a fantastic great lady in French who wrote a book called The Great Reversal, Le Grand Retournement, where she says that humanity is at the brink of a great change, and we all have to turn inside. It's not about turning toward everybody else and projecting things. It's all about inside, which is a great scary thing. So I know you came to New York. I wish I could have come to listen to you, but my dog was dying, so I could not. I'm very grateful. I say it every time. I'm so grateful to you and to everybody in the group because it's so powerful and it supports me to write in a way which I cannot do by myself at home, even with my birds. So gratitude to everybody and to you especially, and all the strengths of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. So several things I heard. One is, yes, I mean, if isn't it interesting if you have multiple languages available to you, and sometimes writing in one isn't going to work, and sometimes writing the other opens things up, and how surprising that can be. And let's just say that this is also true, by the way, I've noticed whether you're writing by hand or you're writing on a computer, or whether you write with your dominant hand or your non-dominant hand. So I feel like there's so many ways that we can really be surprised by how to open a channel, how to get out of our own way. I also really appreciate how you bring up that there is this turning in and the importance of the work of turning in and really doing this personal soul work instead of always turning out to the world. And that is, I think, the work of grief so much invites us to really meet our own interior life. Thank you for that. Thank you. And yes, Caroline, how essential it can be to do it with a community. How different it is than writing alone in our own rooms. Thank you for that. I'm just going to say it's been 5 minutes. So, Jenna, if you would go ahead and make an announcement in the small groups.
Thank you. Hi, friends. It's time to change speakers. Thank you.
And anyone else willing to share something about your own experience tonight, or if you have a question about poetry or process? Dawn, thank you for jumping in. You'll need to unmute yourself though, friend. There you go.
What I found interesting in both of my writings was I ended up with the acknowledgement of, no, I don't want to go there. Whichever way that poem was taking me. And it potentially for some, I wrote in 3 different ways. No, I'm not ready. Or no, that's really not the right direction. Or no, I can't really imagine that. But it was just interesting how I was going, and then I was like, no, thank you very much. So I just found that interesting as I looked back at the various things. In one of them, I ended with, I just have no more words for that thought. So for some of it, it was the writing, but for some of it, it was here or here. No.
Yeah. First of all, I just love the way you say it. I'm so interested in that, right? And just to let ourselves be interested and notice that, right? That in itself is like, to me, Dawn, that's what's thrilling about it. In this way, and this is a little strange, but we get to say yes to the no, right? We get to say, oh, yes, that's that. Look, you even put up your hand and I did at the same time you did, right? No. And we just say, okay, yes to that. Yes, yes to knowing that that is now I'm stopping. If there was some part of you that wanted to explore that further, that no, then I wonder about writing a letter to no. Dear no, what do you have to teach me, right? Why are you showing up? You don't have to answer any of these questions, right? You can just be curious about the no. What is the no offering you? The other thing I might open it up for, is in the poem itself, when you feel yourself hit that no place. First of all, I just want to honor, yeah, you don't have to go there, right? Like, good. You do not have to go there for any reason. That doesn't even matter what the reason is. You just, nope, not going there. Not today, maybe tomorrow, but maybe not. But if there's still a curiosity when you meet that no, this is when I notice in myself, then I start to just write questions without answers, right? I just start to write questions. It could be, what is it that I'm avoiding, or not, right? I don't even answer that. I don't have to answer because that would be to say it, and I don't want to say it clearly, right? But just in this way, we can write around it. And then there can become this increasing intimacy with our own experience.
What would make me change is what I asked myself for each one of these. What would allow that next step? What would allow the no to become a yes? Those were the questions I was asking myself.
Or even is it important for it to become a yes, right? Yeah. And by the way, I've noticed for myself that sometimes yes is just too much. And sometimes I just let okay be enough. Okay. Could I just get to okay instead of yes? Because yes can sometimes be just a little too exuberant. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm so grateful you brought that in. Angela says, I'm grieving my father who died in December, and in May I learned I have a serious health issue, and tonight I realize I have not grieved my personal loss. Right, Angela, thank you for bringing this in. So many flavors of grief, and especially when they pile on top of each other, sometimes one can take precedence and we lose sight of this other one, and how beautiful that you had that awareness. All right, Jenna, it's another 5 minutes if you'd go ahead and let folks know to switch.
Thank you. Hi, friends. It's time to switch speakers. Thank you so much.
All right, and anyone else willing to share tonight about your process, or if you have a question about writing poetry? Yes, and Angela, I see you raising your hand. Small enough I could see.
I I just couldn't find my electronic hand, so I did my best. Um, have you ever written about intertwining griefs, like carrying on from what I said in the chat? Here I have these two very different but pressing types of grief, and I found myself toggling back and forth between them in what I was writing. Have you ever done something like that?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think that I think that the weaving of these things feels so natural in a way. I mean, some part of us maybe wants to, some logical part of us wants to separate things out, and I just don't know if the heart actually works that way. The mind might, but the heart doesn't. So, but once again, Angela, just like I was saying with Dawn, maybe even just bringing the curiosity of what part of me wants to keep these separate, or what part of me thinks they don't belong together. What part of me knows to invite them to both show up? What part of me is able to open up wide enough to meet it all? Or if not, I wish I could open up wide enough to meet it all, if that's the truest statement, right? Just wonder, just bringing that kind of wonder up into it. Thank you so much for that question. Cindy.
Hi. I'm gonna remember to lower my hand. One thing that I was feeling was, I'm not going to read it, but I wrote, all I know is grief is a duty. And I talked about the duty not to make other people uncomfortable, right? And what I've learned about, don't show it, after the door's closed on it. And I thought, that's such a little, it's not significant enough, to be on the page, and because I haven't written that much, but and I was like, no, it's just not a big that's what I'm thinking about. That's what came to my mind. And if I want to write about something more important, I'll do that later. And it is kind of important sometimes too.
That sounds actually really important to me, friend. I guess I don't believe anything's too small to explore. Not anything. And truly, when you said that, I felt in myself like this sense of, oh, there's a lot there, right? There is a lot there to think this is when it's okay and this is when it isn't. This is how I'm supposed to act versus how I want to act. I feel like, this is what I'm supposed to say versus what I'm longing to say. That sounds enormous.
And I wrote, just like, the people that I love the most, I want to protect them, and they can see through me, and I can't hide. And the people that just piss me off because they just don't want to even hear about it because it's too uncomfortable, they don't see it anyway. They don't want to see it. So it's kind of ironic.
And so, Cindy, for this reason, I feel like that writing poems honestly is the place where you do this just for you. You are doing it only for you. And when we're doing it for ourselves, then there's no way that anybody else's opinion doesn't matter, whether we're protecting them, or we're feeling aggressive toward them or defensive with them, or whatever it is we're feeling, honestly isn't important. What matters the most is, am I being true to myself? And when we have this sense of authenticity and real curiosity about our own experience, this is how we grow, right? This is how we grow. It really will not matter what anyone else thinks. This is really just for us. And what a safe space poetry can be to explore that. Well, safe, I maybe mean the exact opposite. What a courageous space poetry can be to explore that. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Friends, we have only just 1 minute, so I'm just going to read a few things out of the chat bar. We have, my first poem started with, I am so tired of. Yeah, I really get that one. And Fran says, yes, we can feel so undeserving of our grief. Deborah says, I like your guidance of thinking of the senses when writing. I was trying to write, and part of me wanted to think of other verbs rather than see, hear, listen, taste, touch, all perfectly good words. And suddenly I was thinking of synonyms. Is it okay to use a thesaurus? Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Where would I
Good.
be without a thesaurus? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to break and say it's time to. Oh, it looks like our breakout rooms still have a whole minute left. Okay, well, we'll let them go for another minute. Um, is it okay to use a thesaurus? Absolutely. And I was also curious why I was thinking of the vocabulary at that moment when it was all pouring out. So I thought the vocab can come later, and the free writing began again, and that was your process. Thank you so much for sharing that, Deborah. You know what? And guess what? Sometimes just wrestling for the right word is exactly what we want to do. That's exactly what we need to do. Just touching it and just wanting the thrill when we touch the right word and we're like, oh yes, that's what I wanted to say. It's so we can feel it in our whole body. Then we're like, that's it. It may not last, right? It might be we look back at it and we're like, oh no, that's not the right word at all. But just in that moment to be able to experience that. Um, I do think that writing can be one of these great pleasures. The irony, the paradox, that it can be a pleasure to write about the most difficult, painful parts of our lives. How is that? Why is that? I just know that it's possible to write about the most difficult things and find real pleasure in being able to express ourselves through it and touch that moment and the relief of turning toward the thing that is most difficult to turn toward sometimes can be immense, immense. Thank you everyone who stayed in this group and chose to just create this gathering, this smaller circle within our larger circle. I appreciate you. And our people are coming back in 11 seconds. We'll have a chance to talk a little bit more when everyone comes back. All right. And here we are again in our larger constellation of humans who chose to be here tonight. Thank you again, everyone, for choosing to show up tonight. So we have just a few moments left, and the first thing I want to do is say something that I had forgotten to say, although we did do it together. I've noticed myself that grief poems tend to come in one of two forms. One of them is we write about the thing it is that we're grieving, the relationship, the person, the planet, the country. So we write directly to it or about it. That's one kind of grief poem, but the other kind is to write about the grief itself. And we end up creating a whole relationship around grief. It becomes another kind of relationship. What is our relationship with grief today or just in this moment? So just noticing two very different kinds of poems that might come out of grief. I'm going to invite you now to very selfishly think, what are you taking away from our time together? Is it something someone said? Is it an experience that you had? Maybe a line from a poem. Maybe something you wrote. What are you taking away from our time together? And thank you, Stephanie, for sharing. If anybody else is willing to share, I'd love to hear a few of these out loud. Perhaps you'd like to write one in the chat bar. And Stephanie, what are you taking away from our time together?
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, my reverend turned me on to your writing, and I'm so glad. Um, I think what I'm taking away is that the way I experience grief is fine to have and to hold. And I'm thinking about my mother who passed away 3 years ago, and it's very complicated. We had a very complicated relationship. She left me out of her will on purpose. And so, um, people will say things to me like, well, your mother loved you in her own way, and your mother had people. No, I I know my truth, and writing about her death has been really cathartic for me because I've been very angry, and not the sadness that we often feel when someone passes. Um, that's my grief is anger right now.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that in and just noticing how writing allows for that, right? Writing has all the room for that. No matter what anybody else says, the writing has space for us to bring any experience we're having. Thank you. And Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. Just to continue on that thread, um, I think that recognition of needing, I always think of my safe place as being alone in my writing, but how that power of community can really still feel like you creating that safe place for us. And like the other speaker, my father died when I was a young child. My daughter died when I was in my 30s, and my mother just died. And I feel great relief from her death, which feels like real isolation. So to hear others in those complicated mother-daughter relationships have a different take, it's just really helpful. And this is not a paid advertisement. I just want to say to you, I'm so grateful for your daily poems in also creating that shared space. Um, I'm sorry, all I can afford is a few coffees at a time, but I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. And yes, thank you for speaking to just how complicated, how complex grief can be. So complicated and so different from moment to moment. Yeah. And to know then that we're not alone in that, that we're not alone in how we are experiencing our loss. I've read so many beautiful comments in the chat bar, and friends will also be sending you the chats so that you'll be able to see that beautiful poem that we co-created. Keisha just put in the chat bar that you're going to be getting, of course, the recording. You'll also be getting all of the poems and the writing invitations that we used tonight. I want to really thank Keisha, who is our tech support, who works for Teach for Change, and she's just volunteering to help us out tonight. And I really want to thank her for that, and also just point you all toward Teaching for Change. Maybe, Keisha, you'd go ahead and put that in the chat bar also. Very last minute, I just want to invite us to maybe go back to that song that we began with, and I'm going to sing it in with a little space in between, so that if you would like to sing back, call in responsively, a little kumbaya moment, if you will, then that'll be available to us. So go ahead and just repeat after me if you wish. You could sing it or just say it. And the song begins. Oh, to love what is lovely.
Oh, to love what is lovely
and will not last.
and
Will not
will not last
and will not last.
and will not last.
What a task to ask of anything.
What a task to ask of anything
or anyone.
or anyone.
That it is ours.
That it is ours.
It is ours.
It is ours.
Thank you, friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll do it again in 2 months. I hope to see you again in 2 months.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Just beautiful.
It was. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I'm back.
How did that happen?
I thought I left.